Gordon Parks, an American photographer, filmmaker, composer, author, poet. Actually, I'm not too sure of what this guy hasn't done in his lifetime. Shout out to my friend Derek Summers, who actually turned me on to Gordon Parks. I was not familiar with his name, but once I saw his photographs and once I did a little bit of research into his life, honestly, it was amazing. Now, he had a very interesting life, which I don't want to get too much into the details because it's actually very long. I am going to give you guys the highlights. However, I do encourage you to check out more of his life and more of his work outside of this video. So to get started with just the highlights about his life, he was born in Kansas in 1912, and he was one out of 15 kids, which is a lot of kids. He actually had no formal training in photography at all, and he's 100% self-taught with a camera that he bought out of a pawn shop. He actually quickly gained experience, and he was actually basically really good right off the bat. And with the advice of somebody, he actually moved to Chicago and he opened up his own portrait camera shop, and honestly from there it just grew exponentially. Eventually he started working for companies like Vogue, and he even directed his own movie, Shaft, from 1971, and I think there's a few more after that, and they even recreated it back in 2019 with Samuel L. Jackson. To note, now this fact is a little different depending on where you look at, but apparently he was one of the first black males to actually be in the Hollywood industry. Definitely fact check me if you guys get a chance. That's just the facts that I found. So he's had a pretty incredible life, and he even photographed the civil rights movement throughout his lifetime. As I said, he had a very long life. He had a very interesting life. We're just hitting the highlights here, but once again, I encourage you guys to look him up and look deeper into his history. With his interesting life, what are some things that we could actually learn from Gordon Parks? Which there's a lot, but I am going to narrow it down to a few items for you. The number one thing, and I think it's the most important thing in photography, is storytelling. So Gordon Parks, I don't know how he did it actually. It's not just composition. It's not just like, you know, the color, the lighting, the black and white. It's not about that. He was just in the right place at the right time, capturing emotion. And I think that is the most essential part of his photography. When he was out in the streets, he was looking at people's life and solidifying that moment within a photograph. And so with just something as that, you know, you have to kind of keep your eyes open when you're out there. See, is there a story I can capture? Are there emotions that I can look into that I can capture? Sometimes it's just even the person's eyes just looking right into the camera, you know, the kids playing in the street, or just capturing the movement of something can invoke emotions. So when people look at your photographs, they can feel something. And that is something that I get when I look at Gordon Parks photos. So the second point I want to make is in line with the first one. It is very similar, but even when you are doing your portrait work versus your street work, you can still tell a story with your portrait work. And just like his most famous photograph, The American Gothic, of a black woman holding a broom and a mop in front of the American flag, you know, you get a ton of information, a ton of symbolism within this photo, and you are creating a story on your own without having to search for it in the street. And so this still continues on with the first point. The second point is just remember that you could still make the story, you could still make it powerful. You just have to put in the work and keep focused, and that is exactly what he did within his photography. Now, the last point I kind of want to make isn't really a point from Gordon Parks. It's actually kind of the idea I get, and I hope that you guys understand as well, is to not be afraid to rise up to these challenges. Of course, he is a black male in America pre and during and post the civil rights movement. And not only did he capture the civil rights movement, but he helped to build up to it. Being a photographer, he captured black American lives here in the United States. And that alone is a huge challenge. Now, of course, we all have our own personal challenges. We have our own societal challenges. And those are kind of things that we should rise up, not like rise up, but we should challenge and we should capture. We should remember this moment in history. And when you guys are out taking photographs or making photographs, one thing that you can do with your photos is to remember that not only does a photo say 1,000 words, but these things can last forever, just like his photos, and they can still tell the same story today as they did back then. So photos are very important, and they can capture the history of the world in that point in time. Now, if you guys want to do a deeper dive into Gordon Parks and the actual techniques that he did with his photography, he actually has a photography book out. It's actually called Camera Portraits, Technique and Principles of Documentary Portraiture from 1948. So you guys might be thinking, it's like, oh, it's 1948, it might be like not as good. But actually it is. I tried to find a PDF online and everything and read through it. It was actually very interesting, and a lot of it still holds up, so I definitely recommend it. Definitely look more into Gordon Parks and his life and his photography, because honestly, once again, I didn't even touch like on so many points that he actually has, and he is a very interesting person. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, hit that like button down below. Leave a comment if you guys have any questions about Gordon Parks, or what is another photographer that we can look into. And lastly, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I'll see you guys on the next one.